Oh my gosh, did you know Richmond can turn an ordinary week into something pretty great? But here's something most people don't realize until after they move here. You can end up living two completely different Richmond lifestyles depending on where you land. And the surprising part, sometimes those two lifestyles are only 15 minutes apart. You could wake up in a historic row house in the Fan, walk down the block for coffee, past murals and old brick buildings on the way toward the river. Then in the day, sitting along the James, watching kayakers run the rapids. Or 15 minutes away, you're in Short Pump. Morning school drop-offs, errands at Costco, dinner reservations near the mall, neighborhood streets full of people heading to sports practice and meeting friends for dinner. Both are Richmond, same metro area, same map, but the daily experience can feel completely different. And I've seen this happen many times with relocation buyers. People move here excited about Richmond, but a few weeks later realize they accidentally chose a part of the area that doesn't match how they actually want to live. If I personally had to move to Richmond next month, how would I figure out where to live before making that mistake? That's exactly what we're walking through today. All right, quick story. Not long ago, I was helping a couple relocate here from Northern Virginia. Like a lot of people moving to Richmond, they started the same way most buyers do. They opened Zillow, zoomed out on the map, and said, Richmond actually looks pretty small. Everything seems close. And technically, they weren't wrong. But what they didn't realize yet, and what almost every relocation client eventually discovers, is this. Richmond might look small on the map, but how you experience the metro area changes dramatically depending on the neighborhood. That same afternoon, we started near the Fan in Carytown. Patios full, people walking with coffee. Runners heading towards the James River trails. Later, we drove out towards Short Pump. Suddenly, the environment looked completely different. Bigger roads, shopping center, families heading into the restaurants, kids piling out of SUVs after school activities. And somewhere between those two stops, they looked at me and said, wait, Richmond feels way more different depending on where you live than we expected. Exactly. Because if you start your home search by looking at houses first, you're actually doing the process backwards. The people who end up happiest here usually start somewhere else. They start by figuring out what kind of Richmond lifestyle they want to live. And if I were moving here next month, that's the very first thing I'd figure out. If I were moving to Richmond next month, the first thing I'd focus on wouldn't be houses. Not square footage, not bedrooms, certainly not Zillow alerts. I'd start with lifestyle because Richmond is one of those cities where daily life can look very different depending on the neighborhood you choose. The real question isn't, what house do you want? It's what kind of life do you want to live here every day? Some people move here and realize they love the walkable city lifestyle. Neighborhoods like the Fan, Museum District, Scott's Addition, or Churchill. You'll see historic row houses, front porches, sidewalks with people walking dogs, and restaurants or coffee shops a few blocks away. You might walk to dinner, bike towards the James River trails, or meet friends on a patio after work. And while Richmond overall is still very much a driving city, about 75 to 80% of residents commute by car. In these neighborhoods, daily life can be surprisingly walkable. But that's just one version of Richmond. Another version is suburban living, places like Short Pump, Midlothian, Glen Allen, or Mechanicsville. Life there tends to revolve around convenience and space. Driveways, garages, neighborhood streets, school drop-offs, and sports practices. You're usually driving more, but you gain more space. And if you go a little farther outside of the city, like Powhatan, Goochland, or Western Hanover, the pace slows down again. Now, you might have several acres, trees around the property, quiet roads, still part of the Richmond region, just a different lifestyle. And the interesting thing about Richmond is that all three of those lifestyles exist within about 30 minutes of each other. The average commute here is roughly 25 minutes, so many people choose where they live based on lifestyle rather than just distance to work. This is where a lot of relocation buyers get surprised. On a map, Richmond looks pretty compact, but what really matters is how people move through the area day to day. Richmond is still very much a driving city. And most of that movement runs through a few main corridors. A typical weekday morning might look like this. Coffee in hand, kids loaded into the back seat. You merge onto Powhite Parkway coming out of Midlothian. 20 minutes later, you're pulling into an office park near Innsbruck, heading downtown, or arriving near VCU Medical Center. And here's something that surprises many newcomers. Even though Richmond is a driving metro, the average commute is about 25 minutes. That means your work, your gym, your favorite coffee shop, and the river trail you run after work can all exist inside the same 20-minute bubble. Quick question for you. If you moved to Richmond tomorrow, would you want the walkable city lifestyle or somewhere with more space and a yard? Let me know in the comments. I always find it interesting where people lead first. Spend a little time around Richmond and you'll notice something quickly. Strike up a conversation at a brewery in Scott's Addition or while grabbing coffee in Carytown, and there's a good chance the person next to you didn't grow up here. You'll hear accents from DC, Northern Virginia, New York, Massachusetts, Texas, sometimes even California. Richmond isn't just a place people land anymore. It's a place people intentionally move to. The Richmond Metro now sits around 1.3 million residents, and the region has been steadily growing as more people relocate from larger East Coast cities. Housing is often the first thing newcomers notice. The median home price in the Richmond Metro is roughly in the mid-$300,000 range, which can feel very different compared to the markets many people are leaving. But cheaper housing alone isn't why people stay. Usually the moment people realize they made the right move happens somewhere simple. Maybe it's walking the James River trails after work, meeting friends for dinner in Carytown, or sitting on a patio at Scott's Addition thinking, okay, this city actually works. That's when the lifestyle combination starts to click. Urban neighborhoods, outdoor access, historic streets, all layered together in the same place. Once the lifestyle makes sense and you understand how the area flows day to day, the next step is understanding how the housing market behaves, because this is where a lot of relocation buyers accidentally trip themselves up. Richmond real estate has its own rhythm. And once you understand that rhythm, the whole process becomes much easier. Demand across the region has stayed strong for several years, partly because more people are moving here while housing supply hasn't always kept up. That's what creates the competitive conditions buyers sometimes hear about. When a well-priced home comes on the market, their attention builds quickly. I've seen relocation buyers experience this firsthand. It's the kind of place where you immediately start imagining your routine turn into the fan district, and you're surrounded by long rows of historic homes, brick sidewalks, and tree-covered blocks. People sitting on front porches, bikes rolling past, walk a few streets, and it becomes obvious why so many people fall in love with these neighborhoods. Then Richmond flips the script again. Head over to Scott's Addition. Old warehouse buildings have turned into restaurants, breweries, and rooftop patios. Within a few blocks, you'll find dozens of places to eat or grab a drink. Then a few minutes later, you could be somewhere completely different, standing on rocks at Belle Isle, right in the middle of the James River. The James River Park system runs straight through the city and covers more than 600 acres. You might see kayakers heading into rapids, runners on the trails, people sitting along the rocks watching the water move past the skyline. And that moment catches a lot of newcomers by surprise. One minute, you're in a city neighborhood. The next, you're standing in the middle of a river. Certain neighborhoods just feel right. Others might look great online, but feel different in person. That clarity matters before making a move, because the goal isn't just finding a house, it's finding the part of the city or metro area where your life fits naturally. The river becomes part of everyday routines. Running straight through the city is the James River Park system, covering more than 600 acres. Locals treat it almost like their backyard. On warm afternoons, you'll see kayakers heading into the rapids, mountain bikers moving through wooded trails, groups climbing across the rocks near Belle Isle. And one thing that surprises a lot of newcomers is this. Those rapids are actually class 3 and 4 rapids running through the middle of the city. That's pretty unusual. Daily routines often start forming around the river. Mornings run along the North Bank Trail, long bike rides along the Virginia Capitol Trail, which stretches about 52 miles from Richmond to Williamsburg, evening walks before sunsets. Outdoor activities doesn't feel like a special event here. It's just part of normal life. And Richmond gets around 220 sunny days per year, which means people spend a lot of time outside. Eventually, the conversation changes. At first, it's all about neighborhoods and housing, but another question starts showing up. What does life here look like 5 or 10 years from now? A lot of people move to Richmond thinking it might be temporary. Maybe it's a new job. Maybe remote work made the move possible. Maybe they just wanted a change of pace. Then daily life starts setting in. Before long, Richmond stops feeling like a place you relocated to. It becomes home base. Part of that comes from the scale of the metro. The Richmond metro sits around 1.3 million residents, large enough to offer opportunity, but still manageable enough that daily life feels easy. And one thing many newcomers mentioned is how quickly routines settle in here. In some cities, it can take years to feel established. In Richmond, that sometimes happens in a few months. At the same time, the city continues evolving. Neighborhoods like Scott's Addition have transformed dramatically over the past decade. Historic areas like Church Hill continue attracting new residents who appreciate the architecture and walkability. That steady growth gives the city momentum. Careers grow here, communities form, and over time, the reasons people stay usually evolve. What started as a practical move becomes a lifestyle decision, which is why the final question many people end up asking is simple. If Richmond really does fit the life you want, how do you actually make the move happen? Here's the honest truth about Richmond. You really don't understand why people move here until you actually experience how life works here. That's really what this whole video was about. If I were moving to Richmond next month, the first thing I'd do is figure out the lifestyle I want. Then understand how people move around the metro area. Learn why so many people are relocating here. Get familiar with how the housing market behaves. Spend time exploring neighborhoods in person. Experience the outdoor lifestyle around the James River. And finally, ask the bigger question many people skip early on. What would my life actually look like here long term? Because once those pieces start coming together, Richmond stops feeling like a place on a map and starts feeling like a place you could actually build a life. And if Richmond is even a possibility for you, the best thing you can do is start asking questions and learning how the metro area really works. Because every neighborhood here has its own rhythm, and finding the one that fits your life makes all the difference. And if you're thinking about making the move, whether that's next month or next year, that's exactly what I help people do every day. You can call, text, email, or schedule a time on my calendar. All of my contact information is in the description below.